Hello, and welcome to another edition of Deeper Roots Bible Study. Today we're going to talk about tests. Not school tests, which may make us cringe, but spiritual tests. That is, does God want us to test Him or not? This is a good question, and it's based, of course, on a seeming kind of conflict or contradiction between a couple of passages in the Bible. Now, context, of course, means a whole lot of things, so we're going to explore the context of some of these passages and also look at another part of testing. That is, in what direction does this testing occur? And should it occur? And in fact, we'll start out with the most important, or maybe I should say the most popular passage regarding the testing of God from the Old Testament. In Exodus 17, verse 7, we have, of course, there in context the passage that involves the Israelites leaving Egypt. And once they've left and they're in the desert, after some time, they start to, it says, complain. They say, where is this water? They reach a particular place. We need water. Seems like a reasonable basis for a complaint. Well, in that passage, Moses tells them, why are you arguing with me? Why are you putting God to the test? Right? Why are you testing him? A few verses later, right, after he's been told, strike the rock and water will come out to provide for the people, it says, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the people of Israel and because they tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord among us or not? Now it's interesting, the place, Massah and Meribah is like a word for contention. Massah is very close to the word used for testing, Nasa, with an N. There's just one letter difference, an N and an M. And it serves as an important reminder because this is not the only time this event is brought up. It ends up getting brought up several times over. Why? Well, because it did exemplify something that they did not want to repeat. In Deuteronomy 6, verse 16, just before they enter the promised land, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test as you tested him at Massah. Deuteronomy 8:16, he who fed you in the wilderness with manna that your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and test you to do you good in the end. Now here is that same word, but now it's directed at the people from God. Interesting. Now this testing comes up several times over. In Deuteronomy 13, verse 3, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you. There it is again. To know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Deuteronomy 33, verse 8, referring to that event, again in Exodus 17, and of Levi he said, give to Levi your Thummim and your Urim to your godly one, whom you tested at Massah, with whom you quarreled at the waters of Meribah. That incident was important. It gets brought up several times over, even in the Psalms. Psalm 78, verse 41. Psalm 78, verse 56. Yet they tested and rebelled against the Most High God and did not keep his testimonies. Psalm 81, verse 7. In distress you called, and I delivered you. I answered you in the secret place of thunder. I tested. And then, there it's the word bachan, the other popular term for testing. I tested you at the waters of Meribah. That's interesting. There he's saying, God is saying, I was testing you, just like you tested me. Well, this whole incident turns out to be a touchstone. The people of Israel are to refer back to it. When they were testing God, what were they assuming? Had they already lost faith to the point where they weren't assuming that this was a generous God, that he had already provided for them during that whole time? No, they were already starting to become maybe malicious. Well, that's why it's brought up again in Hebrews 3, 8, and 9. But the passage that we're all waiting for, of course, is the one from Malachi 3, 6 through 10. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test. Bachan, scrutinize me. See what I've got, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. Well, there he's actually asking them to test him. Now in the context, he's saying, you are not giving the way you should. it's kind of an interesting rhetoric that God is using here. He's actually using the word for you should scrutinize me, you should test me, so that I could test you, so that I could see whether you do assume that I'm generous. Well, he's saying, go ahead and do it. Give like you've always been directed to give, and you'll see that I am very generous. Now, considering everything that had happened beforehand, God, you could say, had proven himself faithful. Now, let's take a look in the New Testament. In Matthew 4:1, the very famous chapter when Jesus is led into the wilderness. And it says, Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested by the devil. The Greek word there, peirazo, is the term that's used multiple times in that chapter, in numerous forms. In verb form, in noun form, it's even used of the tempter. The tempter came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. Well, a few verses later, it says, Jesus said to him, quoting Deuteronomy 6, again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Ek peirazo. Right? He tells him, your attitude is the same as that of the people in Israel when they were in the desert. You are not assuming that I am generous. You are already arguing. You are already maybe even filled with malice or anger. But haven't I proven my faithfulness? You know, in 1 Corinthians 10, 6 through 10, here it even brings up that incident, right? That is other incidents of complaint in the Old Testament. You could read that passage, but it says in verse 9, we must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, right? Referring to other incidents of complaint. Well, when we come to James, it really gets to a very, very interesting and maybe even stupefying point. In James 1:12 and 1:13, it says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. The next verse, let no one say when he is, I'll say the word tested, even though in many of our Bibles it says tempted, I am being tested by God. For God cannot test, right, with evil. Or in some of our Bibles, cannot be tempted with evil. And he himself tests no one. Now, wait a minute. Didn't we already read passages that said he tests people? Here, however, what's being, I think, conveyed is God doesn't test people out of an evil intent. He does not test people with malice. In other words, he's not testing people to show, look how faithless you are. I am plotting this for your downfall. Or I'm going to put you to the test in order to draw you away from me, in order for you to assume that I'm faithless. Why would he ever do that? He would never do that. So that is the heart of the issue. God will test us because he wants what's good for us. In fact, the great passage in Exodus 20, verse 20, do not fear, for God has come to Nasa, to test you, and that his fear may be before you, so that you may not sin. He's not going to test us in order to lead us to sin, to show us that he's faithless. Brothers and sisters, we have a faithful God, and he wants to build us up. When we feel the tests, it's not for the worse, it's for the better. May that strengthen your life with God. Until next time, thank you.